Today we're talking about sitting quietly, doing nothing. This is section 2, part 2 of The Way of Zen. Bala, I know you read it. Shin, did you get a chance to read this chapter? If not, that's totally fine. Bala, what did you think about this section?
I realized I messed up.
Oh.
I somehow read chapter 1 twice.
Ah. Well, okay.
Because I
Bear
thought
with
that's what
me.
you asked for.
Bear with me. I know why you
My
did that.
memory is
Because I
awful.
announced we were reading it twice instead of saying the correct name of the
Oh
chapter.
my god. I'm just like, what is this thing? I'm like,
That,
oh,
that was my bad.
no, that's not your bad. Is it your bad?
Yeah,
Maybe
yeah.
it's your bad.
I mean, one, you didn't notice you were reading the same chapter twice. So maybe like I could let a little blame fall on you, but ultimately I literally said by name the first chapter again when we were going to read this. So I was like, we're going to read the next part. Empty and marvelous. You know what we read
Oh, you
last
said
time?
it
Empty and
correctly.
marvelous. And then I corrected the announcement. I like edited it later.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. I'm so sorry.
No, no, it's fine.
No,
Like
you
I
said
said.
it correctly. Everything is great, and yes, yes, I'll have beginner's mind.
All right. So I really enjoyed a lot of the stuff that Alan gets into in this section. I felt very. I would even go so far as to say like I had a couple of switches flip in my mind where I kind of really understood a couple things a lot more with a lot more clarity after this chapter.
Clarity, huh?
Yeah, that's right, Max. Clarity.
That's forbidden.
No,
Everything must be obscure.
wild. um. So highlighted some stuff, and I only read through this once, and so I don't have a second reading on my belt to remember exactly in what order things happen in the section. Um, but the Alan spends a lot of time talking about spontaneity, talking about the functions inside of us that demand some sort of regulation between a couple of different. Oh, gosh, I lost my wording. I had some good words, and I was going to sound really smart when I said them too.
Now you just sound dumb.
Now I just sound
Come
dumb.
on.
And then he also talks about a lot of not self and our tendency to separate ourselves from versions of ourselves. One section I know that'll come up being this idea of separating yourself from the version of you, let's say, that worries about something, and the version of you that doesn't want to worry about something, and you create a duality in your mind over these sorts of things. I thought that was
And
interesting.
maybe you do.
Yeah, we don't do
Yeah,
that.
nobody in this chat is anxious except
Can't
Des.
relate. Yeah.
Only Des is anxious.
We all knew that.
We all knew that.
But did we?
By the way, sorry I'm late. I'm currently getting ready to go visit Sam's parents. So I'm going to be here, but there might be background noises or a car transition or something.
That's fine. Um, so I really liked when he gets into this Zenrin poem, and it starts out with like a sword that cuts but cannot cut itself, like
Oh,
an
I
eye
fucking
that
love those.
sees but cannot see itself.
I love them. Fire that cannot burn itself.
Yeah, and
Hmm.
at first this feels like a typical not typical uh typical Zen thing where you're like, oh yes, how
Of
gibberishy,
course, you're
beautiful.
saying things that mean nothing. Of course, it's
Of
Zen.
course, yes. But I liked how he tied this into this idea of Zen in being the inheritor of Taoism's spontaneous action as marvelous activity,
Yeah, whatever happened to Taoism, huh?
and the stress upon naturalness. He talks about this a lot. The naturalness, the only artificial thing is the concept of artificialism itself comes up,
Hmm.
And I think that's really interesting.
I mean, yeah, like humans are just as much a part of the natural world as bugs or whatever. Just, we're smart. So our intelligence is also natural and we make things out of artifice. But that
Mm-hmm.
doesn't make them artificial, like in the way we mean it, as distinct from nature or whatever.
And I think this beginning part has a lot of little interesting tidbits and is worth a read. But you start to get, I think, into more of the meat of the discussion when he starts talking about this quote or platitude: "Whatsoever thy hand findeth to do, do it with all thy might."
Yeah.
And we start coming back to the, like, if you're walking, just walk, and sitting, just sit. Above all, don't wobble.
Right. Don't dither.
Yeah. And to really reflect on those was really interesting. And I think that it never. I understand it in that so much as I have reflected a lot on mindfulness. And so that made sense. But then he starts to use this analogy that for some reason flipped a big switch in my brain. And I was like, oh, oh. I don't know. You know what I mean? You just have those moments where you're like, oh, dang, I think
Oh
I get
yeah,
this on a
where
slightly.
something
I've peeled back another layer of the onion.
right. And it's
I'm
not
com-
even like
yeah.
necessarily something particularly deep or revealing. It's just you hit it at just the right angle in your brain where it actually went through rather than glancing off.
Right. And so the analogy then is that he talks about the feedback system of a thermostat where it has a range that it sits on, right? The range being to generally keep the temperature of your home between this temperature and this temperature, and you want to have several degrees between that, because to have it too close would cause the thermostat to almost have an anxiety attack, right? Where it's
Right.
just
On off,
constantly
on off,
on
on
off on
off.
off. The thermostat provides then this kind of sensitive organ and is an extremely rudimentary analogy for human self-consciousness. And yeah, and for beyond a certain point, the mechanism will be frustrated by its own complexity. And just this whole little concept it gets into was really like, oh, wait a minute.
I'm really happy that this helps you because this just makes me angry.
Oh, does it? Tell me about. I want to know why. Tell me.
I mean, this is like this argument, it keeps coming back all the time. And
Mhm.
that's exactly what he says here, that like, there's a thermostat to control furnace, and there's like thermostat to control thermostat, and thermostat, and so on and so forth, right? I,
Mhm.
I, I
Oh, I
think
don't
this
think that's sorry. I don't think
that's
that's
what he
necessarily
says,
the
no?
argument. That is something he says, but I don't think in this instance that's what he's talking about. This has got to do more with a range of workability. So, like in psychology, there's a certain level of mind where arousal is at the good number, right? If you've got too much, you're anxious. If you've got not enough, you're asleep. So you need to
Yeah.
have right in the middle, and it's an acceptable range. And I think that's the analogy Alan's making with the thermostat is there's an acceptable range, and below it, it kicks on. Above it, it just doesn't work until it cools off. But if it's right, like if that range gets shrunk, if you say it has to be like this all the time, well, then you don't have any room for adaptability or growth or change, and the anxiety kicks in because, well, it's changing anyway.
Mhm.
Um, so I think that's more about what he's getting at. Although I do know what you're saying with the
Mm.
whole "who watches the watchers" kind of a thing, right?
Yeah, I think that's not helpful.
Mhm.
It's helpful in that it illustrates an issue. It doesn't present an answer, but it does raise the question of like, I mean, why are we assuming that where it ends is where it ends?
Okay,
And you know,
okay.
also illustrating the whole infinite regress problem, where eventually you're going to have to give up. Like that's the whole thing with the gurus is I'm going to make you work yourself into such a knot that you're going to cry and then give up, and then you'll be able to become enlightened. But until that point, you're going to think you can do it under your own power. So I'm going to make you give up. And this
Well,
is the same sort of thing.
if that's a method designed to create frustration, me being frustrated with it means I'm getting it.
That's right. That's absolutely right. It's working.
It's working! Yay!
Yay!
And I would say also that I began one of the small ways that like the like I said the onion layer peeled back for me just a little bit was also seeing in the ways that my it was such a complicated, and I won't go too much into it, but it was the way that my ego is also the thermostat, and that
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Keep going.
I'm sorry, my ego is the thermostat as well. That like I want to be in this certain realm of existence, and that even wanting to have the thermostat on limits my experiences. Anyway, so it was just like this weird like realization that to exist I need to be in this realm, but also what if I turned the thermostat off? What would anyway,
Now, in
that was
Hinduism, there's a big thing about shutting out the exterior senses and retreating into the pureness of your mind. Is that in any way related to what you're saying?
it would be a branch of what I was
Okay.
saying. It would be one
Okay.
of the small thought processes. I don't think it would be the grander thought process that I had.
That's fair. Just
Um,
trying to build bridges.
no, it's fine. I know. I'm being really convoluted. It's really difficult to express in
You?
words. I know. It's really difficult to express in words the sensation that I had when I really like had this thought process.
Oh, yeah. Describing experiences directly is damn near impossible.
But it felt
Yeah.
very revealing. I don't know. I just felt very in tune in that moment.
Those are some of my favorite times in life is when you're just like, oh, I get it. God damn it. Nice.
Noise.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all you can say is noise.
Right. What more is there to say?
Y'all over there don't get it yet? Too bad.
That's fine. You'll get it.
You'll
Or
get
you
it.
won't.
Or you
Either way.
uh yeah, there it is. The go sign will also be the stop sign, right? If these parameters are too close to each other.
Mhm.
I thought that was interesting. Buddhist samsara is the prototype of all vicious circles. And I was like, ooh, neat. I like that thought process. It wasn't.
Yeah, I can get down with that.
I don't say I don't. I won't say I had anything profound happen at that point in reading, but I was like, ooh, fun.
Yeah, that works.
I
I'll
was like,
buy it.
I guess in reading sometimes it's like, ooh, piece of candy. Like,
Right, right.
like I don't know if this is helpful to everyone or anything, but I thought it was fun. Like,
I mean, that's cool. I don't completely see how thermostat wobbling is precisely what is meant in Zen by going round and round on the wheel of birth and death. That's deep. That's too big of a jump.
mm,
Okay.
So are you saying that I'm trying to adjust myself and oscillating between life and death?
I think
Like the
I'm gonna
thermostat
butcher
oscillates?
this. Mhm. Sorry,
Is that what he's saying?
I'm gonna butcher this, but
You
it
go ahead.
seems
Yeah.
that you're as you put it between life and death, this dithering, this wobbling is you're caught in the circle because you see them as two separate things, almost, if that makes sense.
Okay.
I see what you're trying to say.
No, I'm really bad at trying to
I
convey these
don't.
concepts. I'm really sorry. Why am I in charge of anything? I don't know.
Because you're reliable, Des, you at least follow through.
That's it. That's
I
really it.
can't say that for
What he
myself.
seems to be saying is that, okay, so I am trying, I'm alive, right? Yeah, it's not working. Let's adjust. Okay, I'm dead now. It's not working. Let's adjust. Oh,
Yeah.
I'm alive now.
So
I
It's
see
not
what's
working.
happening.
yes,
I
that's
see what's happening.
yeah.
You are I don't think this thermostat metaphor transitions into this in the same way as it was used originally. When we hadn't brought in, reincarnation, the whole samsaric cycle into this. In terms of being, how did he put it? Des, I don't have my phone open. What was the words he used for the cycle being the prototype of something?
Oh yeah, the
Vicious.
samsara is the prototype of all like
Vicious cycles.
vicious cycles. Yeah.
Okay, so a vicious cycle is something that essentially has a feedback loop and makes itself bigger, right? And if it's vicious, it's worse and bigger. So in that regard, from the Buddhist perspective, every life someone lives, they accrue karma. And then they die and they come back and they accrue more karma while dealing with the karma they've already got. So now they have to balance this karma. And if you do it in such a way that it has to be perfect, you're not balancing anything, you're just having an anxiety attack.
Yeah.
Okay, I get it. That's a good analogy.
But like, I guess, yeah, you could expand it to life cycles themselves. I just don't know that that's what was trying to be illustrated.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, go Team Zen.
All right, Des.
Hmm?
Keep us going.
When the desire for certainty and security prompts identification between the mind and its own image of itself.
Ooh. Hell yeah, attachment.
So it can't let go of itself, and so then the effort to remain always good or happy is like trying to hold the thermostat at a constant 70 degrees, but making the lower limit the same as the upper. So I know, like, I have certainly faced this obstacle in my life before, where I felt like if I wasn't always good in a good mood or quantifiably happy mood, then I was doing something wrong.
Well, you were, Des.
Yes. But that became the focus, which was wrong.
Right. That's what it was. You were doing it wrong.
Mm-hmm. That's fair.
Sorry. Gregory's in the background yelling, like talking to our cat.
Good.
um. So anyway, blah blah blah, blah 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 blah. Why the? This is why Zen often seems to take the side of action as against reflection. Okay, so then we're talking about no mind now, and no thought. And then when asked about the secret of Buddhism, the answer was dumpling.
I like burnt peanuts personally, but
I prefer dumpling.
I mean, I suppose if I have a choice, yeah,
I would rather eat a dumpling.
I would also rather eat a dumpling.
No, I think it sounds better as an answer.
I think it's easier to say. It rolls off the tongue better.
If we're just going with mouth, like the
Dumpling.
sound, I think
Mouthfeel.
corn works very well.
Corn.
Yeah.
Corn.
See?
Mm-hmm.
You abstract it from its meaning and it sounds wonderful.
Or you secretly pronounce it with a K.
Well, I mean, we all do.
Oh gosh. I feel so bad for anybody listening to this later.
Don't. You're welcome, future viewers and listeners.
You're welcome.
You're welcome.
I have no doubt you're enlightened now. You're welcome.
Hello,
I also have no doubt.
Present.
So the attempt to think about action simultaneously at the same moment. Oh, this part is where my brain had a hard time keeping up. So there is this, it's almost like dualistic dualism is almost how I started to feel about certain section in this chapter. was is like you're thinking about thinking,
Uh
and then
huh.
so I highlighted what I thought was a good thing to reflect on, which was this statement is false.
Oh yes, that's
Um,
showing the inadequacy of language.
yeah, because it's a contradiction within itself.
If you
So
try to
that
follow it
was
logically, it's definitely a
yeah.
snake eating its own tail.
Thank you, Shin. Shin says that we are funny. This is good.
Uh, oh, good. Humor is a great teacher, I find. So,
um, oh, I really liked this also. So it then he makes a statement about all of that mindset in that not content with tasting the food, I am also trying to taste my tongue.
yes.
And that helped kind of I'm just gonna use the word summarize that big chunk of everything for me, because that seemed to define it, was that I couldn't be content with what was in the moment or what thoughts were arising in the moment. I had to you have to go further. I have to analyze these against analysis and other data, and then it's just
Right. And the issue with that is that you'll never have enough data. There's
mhm.
always another thing you could learn, or maybe if you wait a little bit longer, things will change, and that'll change the whole equation, or any of that garbage.
Right.
Yep.
It's just, are you convinced enough to believe it, or are you just gonna go, do whatever the hell you were doing, enjoy it,
Right.
or not, whatever.
Um to act without second thought, without double-mindedness, is by no
Ooh.
means a mere precept for our imitation. Men are afraid to forget their own minds, fearing to fall through the void with nothing on which they can cling. Once again, stating, like an eye that sees but cannot see itself.
Mm.
It
That's that is
Hmm?
reminds me of Pema Chodron's book, When Things Fall Apart.
Mm-hmm.
Is that yes, you're falling. That's the bad news. The good news is there isn't a ground, so stop fearing that you'll hit it.
I just heard it recently somewhere else. The idea was that falling into a bottomless pit is the safest thing you can possibly do, because if there is a bottom, that's the problem.
Right.
Bottomless is just fine.
It's the landing that kills you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Up until then, you're actually flying.
Yep.
And it's just a mental shift of I'm falling versus I'm flying and this is great. That's the difference between samsara and enlightenment. Sounds trite, but it's true.
That's fair.
Oh, here we go. This is something I was trying to mention earlier, which was, then the mind which does the stopping and the mind which is stopped become divided, and there is no occasion for peace of mind.
Mm.
Well,
Say it again, Alan.
this is all about realizing the oneness. But it seems that it's sort of an exercise that kind of leads to that. The idea that there's a spontaneous action, right?
Mm-hmm.
That
Mm.
that's about like there's oneness between my thought and the action, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm not creating a vision of myself in the future doing the action that's separate from me. There's this like concept of self, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
but it's just this is an exercise, right? This is like how you get to that realization.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like with a math equation, you have to have those intermediary steps to get to the answer from the problem. But if you really look at
Right.
it from far away, you see that the answer is also the problem in the first place.
In other words, it's perfectly fine if I plan to go have some pizza, 3 hours from now. That's okay.
Right.
All right,
Just
good.
so long as you're not sitting there thinking about it for the next 3 hours.
Like fixating on it, yeah.
Right.
Right.
But you don't want to brush it off, because as like this little quote I also highlighted says, it's trying to brush off these thoughts that arise is trying to wash blood off with blood.
Oh, yeah. If they arise, simply say, okay, and then carry on. Don't attach to them. Don't shoo them away. Just don't give them any attention, really, unless you want to. But if you notice that giving them attention's a problem, then change that.
Yeah. I feel like I can remember a time in my practice where I felt like having these thoughts arise felt like a failure. Like
Uh-huh.
that I
Yeah.
haven't like I'm not
Yeah.
doing it right.
Right. Oh no, a thought arose that I didn't control. I'm clearly unenlightened.
Oh poo.
Oh poo, I better start trying even harder.
I better fixate more.
Yeah, that'll solve it.
That's the solution to everything.
If I get super anxious and uptight, that'll make me the most enlightened ever.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
You make it sound so easy.
Yeah, it is. Just be more anxious, Paula. Done.
Anything can sound easy, but does it look easy?
On a
That's the
side
real
note,
question.
I'm personally like a little proud of myself. I've been way better about my my thought processes and shutting down fixated thought processes.
Nice.
And so that's been
That
feeling.
that takes a lot of work to do.
It is so much friggin' work.
But it gets easier as you keep doing it because you're building up that habit of saying, "No, I don't have to fixate."
Yes, exactly. And it's very often like these same things where they arise and I'm like, "All right, there's that thought, but do I need to grab it? Do I need to hold on to it?" And I think the most frustrating sometimes about these lessons, whether you're on like some kind of cognitive behavioral therapy or if you're just pursuing the practice or Zen, is that sometimes you have to just keep learning the same lesson every year.
Oh, for sure.
And that's okay.
Absolutely, yes. I man, my brain is so far gone at this point, but I know that there have been things that I've been smacked with like at least 4 or 5 times. Like, hey, you remember how you learned this? Here it is again. I'm like, oh, that's right.
Oh yeah.
Hey, you remember how you learned this again? Here it is again. I'm like, oh God, that's right.
Again.
Okay, here we go.
Right. And I think that also learning not to kick yourself for for those
Oh yeah,
reoccurrences and relearnings and saying, "Yeah, okay, I guess I'm learning again." And that helps a lot too.
yeah. It was such an immense change to my practice when I learned to be thankful for realizing mistakes rather than being like judgmental to myself for
Mhm.
realizing mistakes, because the realizing is growth. That's learning. Celebrate that.
Yeah.
You know, just because you made a mistake, okay. Mistakes aren't a problem. It sounds weird to say that, but mistakes aren't a problem. It's learning from them or not learning from them that is the problem.
Mhm.
But
Well,
you said
Everyone
you
makes
are not
mistakes.
learning from them.
Huh?
one more time,
You
Paula.
said you are not learning from them because you keep repeating them 4 to 5 times.
Yeah.
Exactly. But
So
that's part of the samsaric cycle right there, like just in a micro scale. Here's this thing. Oh, you didn't get it. All right, try again. Here's this thing. Oh, you kind of got it, but then you forgot. Here we go again. You
Yeah.
know.
I
so the
would.
problem is with forgetting, and you have not really forgotten because you remember that you learned it before,
Right.
but it's
It's
not
not so much
connected.
about a it's not a memory thing so much as it is an adjustment of awareness.
Mhm. It's like a lack in practice. Like you let your mindfulness or your practice slip.
And that
And
happens. That happens to
yeah.
everybody. Like there is no shame in being like, well, you know, I got kind of mad and I recognize that it's ego and it still happens and I can't really do anything about it yet. Okay, that's just where you are. Like, no one expects anyone else to have attained, you know, uh, full bodhisattva status, equanimity, and all that kind of shit. Like, that's great if you can do it, but we're all just out here, man. We're just trying to like smile at a stranger or something, you know?
Mhm. Well,
Mm.
I think it can be connected that we talked about it just a little bit earlier, Bali. You brought up beginner's mind And I think it can
Yes.
be very similar. That.
Beginner's mind is such an interesting thing.
Mhm.
I don't think I have that anymore.
Oh.
I think it's gone. But like, yeah, there's so many possibilities. Once you hit enlightenment, it's like you go back to beginner's mind because you recognize that everything you've accumulated, all of these, I don't know, knowledges or insights or whatever, it's all just, I mean, so what? You don't
Mm.
have to say it. You don't have to have those thoughts. You just need to be who you are. And if you're actually enlightened, you're gonna be who you are. And that will show through. That will shine through all of your actions and your deeds and your words. And you don't have to go on diatribes or give sermons or write books or any of that, although it certainly helps. We see how Alan Watts did. Um, but like, you don't need to do that as a way to prove anything. You can do it as an offering,
Mhm.
as a way to try and help the others. But once you stop trying to prove to others how enlightened you are, you're that much closer to being enlightened for real.
Yeah.
But that doesn't happen in the beginner's mind where you try and prove how much you know because you know you don't know anything. Unlike me, I know so much that it's in my own damn way.
Hmm.
Yeah, well,
Mood.
I really brought up the beginner's mind because I had such strong beginner's mind that I read chapter one twice. Then
Ooh,
I complained that it feels like I read this twice. And
that's great.
then I realized I was supposed to read chapter two, and I didn't. And so I'm reading it now as we are talking. So yeah, it's very fresh to me.
Well,
That's excellent.
if you've got the time, I do recommend going back and kind of reading through it at your own pace. It is it's pretty chunky. It's got some good stuff in it though.
I like chunky salsa, Des.
I love I love salsa. Sorry. I immediately could almost taste it in my mouth. Like that's how
Uh-huh.
much I love salsa. I'm very
Yeah. I'm sorry I had you swerve so hard. I should keep in mind to navigate your ADHD towards the content, not away from it.
No, I thought that was my job with you.
I know, right? It's hard to tell, isn't it? Really hard to tell.
Who's keeping who on track? We don't know.
Who ADHDs the ADHD?
Ooh.
Yeah.
I think we're doomed.
We are doomed. Doomed.
we got us
Doomed.
knuckleheads in charge. Everyone's doomed. Yeah.
Yeah. To transition us into a new kind of part of this section, I
Do it.
really enjoyed kind of stepping back and seeing Zen through this lens. Alan states, one must not forget the social context of Zen. It is primarily a way of liberation for those who have mastered the disciplines of social convention, of the conditioning of the individual by the group.
Yes.
And
Zen is the antidote to Confucianism.
yeah, yeah, it's a medicine for the ill effects of these conditionings, for the mental paralysis and anxiety which come from excessive self consciousness. And I was like, oh my goodness. I wouldn't say I peeled back as thick of a layer from the onion, but a little bit like, oh, came at came at me when I was reading this. This.
See, but if you don't get conditioned by the society, completely bypassing both Confucianism and Zen, just arriving at the destination, then the society just beats it into you. It's awful. Do you see that?
Yeah, yeah. I almost don't think that. I think on some level, some very small level, that it's almost being said here that you need to have that other conditioning to fully embrace it as like a foil to it.
I'm
But
not sure what I think about it. It's like saying, like, okay, in order to arrive, you first have to leave, and then you have
yeah.
to come back. I'm like, no, I'm here already. What's your problem?
So you say that, and I'm immediately reminded of how in art, when I'm creating a piece, or when someone I know is creating a piece, or a student, that there's an amount of value to stepping away from what you're working on, to really leaving the room,
Oh yeah,
taking your eyes off of, or otherwise working on something else for a little bit and coming back to it with fresh eyes.
for sure.
Because you can get so engrossed in the project, you get so wrapped up in it that you stop seeing the bigger picture, right? You see the
Yeah,
tiny, tiny details. And so, Max has brought this quote up a lot, but it's the one about not seeing the forest for the trees. Or Max, how does that quote go?
that is essentially it. Yeah, like you you get tunnel vision of a sorts if you get
Mm-hmm.
stuck on something for too long, because the mind is convinced that, okay, well, I've got it figured out on the grand scale. Now, if I just focus down, I can get these fine details. And as everyone knows, the devil's in the details. So I have to be very careful to make sure it's right. But that's when you start going wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Because, well, you're looking at this detail, but have you kept in mind that other detail? And then when you recognize, oh, I didn't, then you say, well, shit, I have to do that. And then there's a third detail over here.
Mm-hmm.
And now you expand it and you say, okay, well, I'll look at the whole picture and keep every detail in mind simultaneously. Then you have a little bit of a shutdown and you have to go have a coffee. Then you come back and it's like, what was I doing? No, no. Look, I'll make these changes here. It's beautiful. I'm done.
Also sometimes, and it's really funny to me when these. This is a stupid analogy, so bear with me. It's additionally with the art. Sometimes there's a rule in art that the reality is that most art is going to be placed on a wall and only needs to look good from 8 to 15 feet away.
Right.
Like, for the most part, people who buy art and hang art in their homes are not putting their nose to it. Like, you know what I mean? So,
True.
art needs to be seen from those steps away, those feet away, right? And so I think sometimes these concepts and the path and the practice all comes back to the nose to the paper details really are too much. They can be fun and they can be very interesting to work on, because I know like highly technical art can be very meditative to work on and stuff. But the reality is, when it comes down to it, that's not what people are going to see, and they're
Yeah.
not, you know.
It's all a matter of scale, isn't it?
Mhm.
Um, if you're working on a microchip, every detail does matter. If
Yeah.
you're working on a giant mural that people are going to be looking at from 40 feet away, I mean, who the fuck cares if you've got the lines and the fingernails right?
Right.
Like, what are you doing? No one's going to go look at that. So get the general idea. Like, essentially, uh, do what you're doing while keeping what's happening in mind. So if you're writing a play, keep in mind the audience and the
Mhm.
set and the actors and all that. What you can and can't do for costume changes. Just apply that to anything you're doing, whatever the context is, and it'll go a lot better than like the perfectionist mindset.
Mhm.
Um,
Mm.
but even in science, like, you'll be working on a problem and you'll get really close, and the closer you get, but still hit a wall, the more frustrated you feel, and the more you're like, if I just push harder, if I just, I guess, throw more numbers out there and calculate them and see, I'll
Mhm.
get it. But no, that's just going to burn you out, and then you're going to feel bad about yourself for not having gotten it. If you go for a walk or like have an ice cream and then come back, maybe something that'll have happened while you were not actively paying attention would have informed you of something. Maybe a subconscious process can be carrying on while you're doing something else, mulling over ideas in ways that you can't consciously control. And it's that subroutine, that subconscious processing,
Mhm.
that can help bridge these gaps, which active exertion just won't. But you're not going to do that again until you've given up. You've said, I've gone and I've gone and I've gone and I just can't do it, so I'm going to go fuck off.
Yep.
And then it happens and you get that aha.
I feel like this quote then ties in a bit to what you're saying as soon as I recognize that my voluntary and purposeful action happens spontaneously by itself, just like breathing, hearing, and feeling, I am no longer caught in the contradiction of trying to be spontaneous.
Yes, that's a perfect segue. Yes.
That's very cool. That's very cool. It's like if you are Alan Watts or something.
Oh, yes, that's me. I'm actually secretly Alan Watts.
How do you know the words he says so good?
I happen to read the book.
Oh, that's witchcraft.
Witchcraft, I know. I'm
Reading.
amazing.
How
Yes.
dare you be literate?
I read the book and made notes. It was wild.
Yeah, that's witchcraft.
Yeah.
Pretty much. It's like notes.
I mean, if it helps, if you take away my notes and my book and ask me to teach you anything about anything, I'll be like, nope.
So, the quote you
Maybe
mentioned,
that's what we should do the next time.
that's how I used to conduct my my Sangha chats.
Mhm.
I would just come in and have, here's a topic. I'm going to rant about this topic. Any questions? Okay.
I mean, that could be a
Well,
really fun way, though. I'm sorry, Bala.
so if you tried to have a book club
Mhm.
where the book is actually not present at all, that means you would have understood and assimilated the entire chapter well enough that you can just say it from memory, right? Which would mean you would have to have deeper understanding.
I don't know that I would be able to quote the book from memory, but I think there is value in taking away the source material and allowing the discussion to have a more organic unraveling.
Speaking about organic unraveling, that quote you mentioned
Yeah.
about spontaneity and recognizing that it is not intentional effort, but just an act of being.
Mhm.
Dang it. My contextualizing made me forget what I was going to say.
I'm sorry. You want me to read
It's
the
not
quote
your
again?
fault, Des. Yes, please.
As soon as I recognize that my voluntary and purposeful action happens spontaneously by itself, just like breathing, hearing, and feeling, I am no longer caught in the contradiction of trying to be spontaneous.
Okay, thank you. That did remind me. This is implying anatta,
Mm.
right?
Mhm.
Ooh, really?
There is no self which does these things.
Mhm.
There is the ego which gets caught up on itself and prevents them, however. And when you stop doing that, they happen of their own.
I guess
It's
it
not,
does somehow imply it.
yeah, it's not you
No,
doing
no,
it.
no, 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 no. It doesn't. I could totally just have a self that just does nothing. It just sits there.
Mhm.
Such a
Uh-huh.
self isn't a self.
I don't see it.
Or, well, no, it's not a self. It might be, but it's not you. You see what I'm saying?
Okay, I see what you're saying. It
All
would be
right.
like having like a sibling or something that just does nothing all the time.
Right. They're
Yeah,
there, sure, but so what?
but they are not
Mhm.
me. Yeah. Okay, fair. There's no self. You convinced me. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for believing me. uh,
uh, I will
that was great.
say, Bala, you don't have to be convinced. It's fine if you disagree. For
What if I say you do have to be convinced and you can't disagree? Is that balance? That's balance.
I can try. That would actually be kind of fun.
Oh boy.
No, no, I
Uh,
actually sometimes do that. It's amazing. It can be really dangerous, right?
oh yeah.
goodness.
Just like, like, okay, I'll accept whatever comes in the next 15 minutes, absolutely, unquestioningly. And hopefully
Yeah.
nothing bad comes.
Right. I suppose it really depends on like, and what's the duration of acceptance? Do you just think, okay, for a day I'll try this out, or is it just that's how I live now? Like,
Mhm.
I don't think I can really do it like all the time, but I can do it in like short spurts.
mhm.
Usually until something happens that I really don't want to do, and I'm like, okay, we're done with this exercise. See what I mean?
Mhm. Hmm.
Just an exercise.
That's
Interesting.
all it ever is.
Fair.
Sorry, I'm reading this little poem on this page. Um, deciding if it's worth reading out loud all the way. It is by Shong Tao Ke.
Mm,
Um,
the one and only.
like the empty sky, it has no boundaries, yet it is right in this place, ever profound and clear. When you seek to know it, you cannot see it, you cannot take hold of it, but you cannot lose it. And not being able to get it, you get it. When you are silent, it speaks. When you speak, it is silent. The great gate is wide open to bestow alms, and no crowd is blocking the way.
This is some Dao De Jing type shit,
Mm-hmm.
and I dig that.
Yeah, it's definitely Tao. Yeah.
Who's that person?
Alan definitely references the Tao a lot in this chapter, particularly, but I think also a little bit throughout the book.
Well, I mean, he's presenting Zen to us as the love child of Taoism and Buddhism.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Mm.
okay,
Well, he did talk about them before. I'm not sure if he like. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. You're right. You're right. You're right. You're actually right.
me?
Yes. No. No. I was just thinking like that. What you are saying is that like he like let's say deeply studied Dao, and then he's like seeing it everywhere from then on.
Right. If you've
Um.
got a hammer, everything's a nail kind of situation.
But it's genuinely there, so you can't blame him for that.
Right. Um, Des,
Hmm?
that quote you gave was so much. Can you give me like two contradictions next to each other, and we'll just look at those? Because that was like five or
Oh,
six.
the poem? No, I just thought it was
Yeah.
fun. I
Just
didn't
one
Oh, come on. I
contradiction.
necessarily.
want to analyze it.
I would say that Zen describes all means and methods for realizing the Tao as legs on a stake, utterly irrelevant attachments.
Not steak, snake.
Snake, yes. Well, I think legs on a stake is also worth thinking about.
I think that is just artisanal steak, but
Artisanal steak.
that's an extra $80. That's good marketing.
I mean, legs
Mm-hmm.
on a steak sounds like some fair food.
Right.
It
But
does. It does. Fair food is
mm,
wild sometimes. Have you seen deep fried butter?
Hold on. Legs on a snake, though.
But deep fried butter, yo.
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah. No.
Zen describes all means and methods for realizing the Tao as deep fried butter, utterly
Irrelevant
irrelevant attachments.
attachments.
Yeah.
This doesn't work.
It
So,
does, though. It does. Why would you deep fry butter? Because we can. Fuck. All right.
Why? Oh.
There's certain Zen to it, yeah. Utter irrelevance.
I'm sorry. Terrible book club host. Um. Okay. The Taoist mentality.
You'll get there.
The Taoist mentality, the aimless, empty life does not suggest anything depressing. On the contrary, it suggests the freedom of clouds and mountain streams. And some other words.
Okay. So emptiness of life is not depressing. This is obviously talking about, again, anatta, no self, emptiness.
Mm-hmm.
Form is emptiness, emptiness is form. We all know the classics.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a struggle I've run into when trying to explain it to people that don't have the context. Like, how can you justify and tell someone that, like, yeah, I don't actually exist. I'm just a being of energy that is passing through this body that will then collapse and turn into different energy, but really I'm actually all of it at the same time. I'm just differentiated right now into this specific experiential like perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And already their eyes are glazing over, like, what the fuck? And then you bring up, and you don't exist either, no one does, we're all empty shells. And they're gonna be like, why would I believe this? What
This is
what benefit?
nonsense.
I would believe it.
It's depressing as shit.
No, it's not. It's amazing.
Well,
Like
see,
like
that's
being
exactly
one
it.
with everything sounds amazing.
Well, I didn't bring that up.
You did not?
I was just bringing up how we aren't us.
Oh. Oh, so
Yeah.
you just okay. Yeah. Oh.
Just
Okay. Yeah.
in
Yeah.
terms of explaining emptiness to someone, I mean, in the West, we are all raised, you have a soul and it's beautiful and perfect. And then here comes a Buddhist saying, no, you don't. You're empty. You're an empty shell of human. And, you know, you're going to be reincarnated and come back and do it again, but it's not actually you. So,
Yeah.
what?
Yeah, I admit that's pretty lame. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if it was at least me, I can dig that. Is
Right.
like that removes an anxiety of sorts. But this
You have
way, it's like, really, you're not doing much for me.
Mm-hmm.
I find it fascinating contrasting things like evolutionary psychology with religious doctrines and metaphysics, because evolutionarily, our minds are geared towards having something that is long lasting. And that
Right.
stems from having children and making sure that they live and have children. But because we're intelligent animals, we also then can extrapolate that into I'll make a building that lasts, or I'll make a movement that lasts, or I'll make a computer that's me that lasts. Like, it just keeps going to more extreme things until we eventually will try and get to I'll just make me that lasts, I won't die.
I will not die.
But death is an important part of life.
Mm-hmm.
And so then the idea of reincarnation is given. Oh, you mean I can come back? Okay.
Yeah.
That's fine. I'll buy that then. That gives me some ease. In the West, we would see reincarnation as a good thing. I get another chance. It's like a new life in a Mario game.
Yeah. It was fun when we were young, right? Let's do it again.
But like in the East, it's not rebirth. This is a curse. This is re-death. You get to experience all of the illness, the pain, the suffering, and the dying as everyone else multiple times. It's somewhat pessimistic if you look at it. It is at least something that presents you with a sense of urgency when it is combined with saying, but there's a way out that doesn't have suffering. And then you say, well shit, I want to have the not suffering one rather than the suffering every time. Okay. So then you get the different dharmic paths that lead you out of samsara.
Yep.
So like that's the Eastern way of getting around it, but it's not compatible with our view in the West.
Well, that's because we don't realize that life is suffering.
Right. We think it's great. We think that suffering is an error, that pain is just an inconvenience. We'll get over it. It gets overshadowed by all the fun food and games and sex and whatever. And it's like both views could learn a lot from the other.
Mm-hmm.
It's both sickness and joy and dying and laughter. It's all of it.
Wow. That's so you're saying that, let's say, Hindus can learn from like hedonistic like Western people?
Yes.
Wild.
I really?
I think so.
I thought they already kind of know that and are beyond that. It's like I always think of it like we're kind of like the lower level and they're like the higher level that also contains the lower level.
That's
You
an
don't think
interesting
that's how it
attachment.
is? I thought you get attachments and stuff like automatically, and then you overcome them, right? But you
Right,
still
right.
experience that even if you are Eastern.
Oh, for sure. For sure. I'm saying that, like, both East and West, first off, bullshit dichotomy, but we're using this in terms of philosophical leanings,
Mm-hmm.
have great strengths
Yeah.
and some weaknesses or things that don't get addressed or just aren't even, like, why would you care? You know? So I think, for example, the West has worked diligently at developing many different moralistic frameworks. And it's like explicitly just here's ethics.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not here's ethics and why they are enforced or whatever, like in terms of God said so or some shit like that. It's just here's what deontology is. Okay, that's it. It's self-contained. In the East, they have a more holistic approach, right?
Mm.
Everything includes everything else because that's what the world is.
Mm.
Everything includes everything else. I can't just have a tree on the grass if it's not like in the ground. You know, it's got to be connected.
That's true. Like my wife actually ran into this in wildlife rehab because, like, let's say, in the East, people would just leave animals suffer
Mm-hmm.
and they will not put them down.
Hmm.
And here there's like an entire framework about how to make these sort of decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Like when it actually is better to end the life of the animal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
The
they just don't
quality
do
of
that.
life argument. Yep.
Right, exactly. So yeah, we put thought into things that they wouldn't even bother with because they already think it's like resolved, right?
Right. They've got other concerns. And there's nothing wrong with that. It just means that there's things they haven't considered.
Mm-hmm.
Just as there's a whole shit ton that we haven't considered that they're like, yo, listen, though.
Mm,
And we should. I
fair.
think there's a lot of growth that we could have from cultural and even religious exchange. But I mean, the only way for that to have any sort of beneficial outcome is if we pull our heads out of our asses and stop saying, I'm the right one, trying to shout the other one away.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're
Fair.
not. We're all just humans. And that's like, I do enjoy at least my interpretation of how Buddhism is presented, in that it's not overly moralizing. It's not saying that you should or shouldn't do this. It's just saying, hey, look, this will help you suffer less. You could do that. And then it just sort of leaves you to yourself,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not going to judge you for not doing it. You can't say that for, many other religions.
Mm.
But Buddhism, in that sense, doesn't seem to be insecure. It's not trying to prove a point. It's just trying to give you a gift of here's something people have learned, and it's worked for them. You could try it,
As the fish
and
swims
I
in the
think
water, but is
it sure
unmindful
fucking
of the
does.
water.
But
Yes. Oh my God, the fish in the water analogy. Oh yes. Thank you for reminding me of this. This is a gem.
You
I'm
were
gonna.
getting to a point in what you were saying that I thought, oh, this quote will tie in a little bit. Um,
Mm-hmm.
is as the fish swims in the water but is unmindful of the water, the bird flies in the wind but knows not of the wind. So the true life of Zen has no need to raise waves when no wind is blowing, to drag in religion or spirituality as something over and above life itself.
Mm-hmm. 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 Oh, that's good timing. Yep.
wow. It's almost like if your thoughts are just like following the milepost that Alan Watts put down. That's really cool.
I read the book once, many years ago.
Impressive. It's still there somewhere.
Yep.
As far as I can
That's
tell, Max
impressive.
has a great memory for these things but doesn't realize it. So
This is true.
I've been trying to
I
get.
believe my memory is bad.
That's
Yeah, but during
impressive.
discussions, you have a very solid line of thought that tends to follow many of the texts that we either read or find.
I integrate what I learned, but I don't remember it.
Mm-hmm.
See, one thing I don't understand is, okay, so all right, so you're saying that
Time
Buddhism
to go.
doesn't have this insecurity in it as much, right? Or maybe not at all. everybody could be that way, no? Like why isn't everybody doing the same thing? Do you see what I
Just
mean?
a second, y'all. I'm gonna have to get ready to leave.
Okay.
Oh,
I might be able to get back on though. I don't know. BRB.
yeah, I'll probably have to go too.
Okay, that's fine. We can wrap up. That was a great discussion, though. I think the question you're about to ask sounded really good, and you might put it in the Sangha or Discourse chat.
Yeah, I'll
I think
do
that would be a
that.
good place for it for Max to find later and be able to respond.
Yeah. I'll put it in later. I'll ruminate on how to present it the best.
I think it's a good idea. But that was a really good discussion, and
Oh, great. Thank you.
thank you.